Most people believe that money is purely a matter of mathematics. They think wealth is built on spreadsheets, interest rates, and predicting the unpredictable swings of the economy. But let me share a sobering truth with you right from the start. Money is not a math problem. Money is a profound psychological test. The greatest fortunes and the most enduring legacies are not built when the sun is shining and everything is easy. They are forged in the quiet spaces of a crisis, exactly when the masses let fear hijack their logic. You look around today and you see people checking the news every hour. You see their stomachs tied in knots over inflation, market fluctuations, and the endless stream of bad news. They allow the external chaos of the world to dictate their internal weather. You might be feeling that exact pressure right now. The weight of financial uncertainty can be heavy, almost paralyzing. It makes the average person want to react emotionally, to panic, or to make impulsive decisions born out of pure survival instinct. But I want to show you a different way to live and a different way to handle your resources, a way that is rooted in discipline and deep stillness. At the very end of our time together today, I am going to leave you with a few moments of absolute silence. It will be a quiet space intentionally left for you to let these thoughts settle and to examine your own financial philosophy without any distractions. Because before we can change your physical wealth, we must first change your mental approach. We need to address the noise in your head before we get to that quiet space. We must talk about why those who build lasting independence never seem to lose their minds when the rest of the world is in a panic. They have mastered the stoic reality that money is attracted to calm and always flees from desperation. They do not wish the markets were easier. They demand that they themselves become better. If your financial reality is simply a reflection of your emotional discipline, what exactly is your current state of panic costing you? There is a fundamental divide in how human beings approach the concept of survival, especially when it comes to the resources that feed their families and secure their futures. I have spent decades observing the habits of those who possess nothing and those who have built empires. And the most striking difference between the two is never their intellect. It is not their luck. It is how they manage the space between a crisis occurring and their reaction to it. The majority of people live their lives entirely at the mercy of external circumstances. They are emotional pendulums, swinging wildly from unwarranted euphoria when times are good to absolute despair when times get tough. When the economy is booming, the average person believes they are a financial genius. They mistake a rising tide for their own personal ability to swim. But the moment the tide goes out, the moment the headlines turn dark, the inflation rate climbs, or the market crashes, they are entirely exposed. Panic sets in. Their heart rates elevate, their sleep vanishes, and their minds become chaotic. They make decisions based on the terrifying illusion that the sky is falling. They sell when they should hold, they hide when they should build, and they complain when they should be learning. The successful, on the other hand, operate on a completely different frequency. They understand that money is a highly sensitive energy. It is repelled by anxiety and attracted to calm. The wealthy never panic because they have accepted a stoic truth long before the crisis ever arrived. They know that winter is always coming. They do not act surprised when the snow begins to fall in the economic landscape. They expect it, they prepare for it, and most importantly, they understand that their internal peace cannot be tied to an external fluctuating number. I want you to think of your life as a grand design, a blueprint that you are entirely responsible for. The amateur builds a house of straw, crosses his fingers, and prays to the heavens that the wind will never blow. When the wind inevitably comes and tears his house down, he curses the wind. He blames the weather, he blames the government, he blames the economy. He cries out that the world is unfair, but the wind was just doing what the wind does. The fault was not in the weather, the fault was in the design. The architect of wealth, the true designer of a formidable life, builds on solid rock. The architect does not wish for the wind to stop. The architect knows that storms are a necessary part of nature's cycle, so they dig deep, they pour concrete, they reinforce the steel. When the hurricane hits, the architect might feel the building sway, but they do not panic. They sit quietly in their living room reading a book because they know the foundation holds. They put in the hard work when the sun was shining so they could afford to be peaceful when the sky turned black. This brings us to a core philosophy that will change your financial life forever if you let it sink in. You must stop wishing that the economy was easier. You must start wishing that you were better. Stop wishing for fewer problems and start wishing for more skills. Stop wishing for less inflation and start wishing for more wisdom. The marketplace does not care about your needs. It only compensates you for your value. And your value is dramatically reduced the moment you lose your emotional control. When you panic, your vision narrows. You lose the ability to see the horizon because you are too busy staring at the ground ground right in front of your feet. Panic convinces you that a temporary setback is a permanent tragedy. But those who have mastered the art of living stoically with money see financial loss through a completely different lens. They do not view a bad investment or a market downturn as a personal attack from the universe. They view it as tuition. Life runs a very strict university, and the most valuable lessons in the financial world are rarely taught in classrooms. They are taught through the pain of mistakes. When you lose money, the average person feels shame. They feel defeated. But the architect understands that they have simply paid a fee for a lesson they desperately needed to learn. If you panic, if you retreat into fear, you have paid the heavy tuition, but you have skipped the class. You have suffered the loss without extracting the wisdom. Money loves quiet confidence. It flows toward the individual who can stand in the middle of chaos and still see the chessboard clearly. You must understand that true wealth is not the accumulation of dollars. Dollars can be printed, devalued, or lost in a bank run. True wealth is the accumulation of a mindset that knows how to generate dollars regardless of what the economy is doing. If you take all the money away from a true architect of wealth today, they will not panic. Because you only took their money, you did not take their blueprint. They know that the real capital is locked inside their own minds. It is in their emotional resilience, their discipline, their network, and their ability to stay remarkably calm when everyone else is running for the exits. During an economic crisis, wealth does not actually disappear. It simply changes hands. It moves from the hands of the fearful into the hands of the patient. It transfers from the people who react emotionally to the people who act strategically. So you have to ask yourself what kind of structure you are currently building. Are you constructing a financial life based on the fragile hope that the weather will always be perfect? Are you tying your emotional stability to the unpredictable movements of a world you cannot control? Or are you willing to do the deep, quiet work of an architect? Are you willing to build an internal foundation so strong that no external crisis can ever dictate your peace of mind? Because if your peace is dependent on the balance in your checking account, you will be a prisoner to anxiety for the rest of your life. Freedom is not having endless amounts of money. Freedom is having the emotional sovereignty to know that no matter what happens to the money, you will always be all right. You will rebuild. You will adjust the sails. Look at your own reactions over the past few years. When the prices went up, when the world seemed to turn upside down, did you become a student of the moment, or did you become a victim of the circumstances? I remember a distinct period in my life when I thought I had finally figured it all out. I had moved past those early struggling years. I was working incredibly hard. I was building my discipline, and I had managed to accumulate what felt to me like a very significant amount of financial security. I was proud of the numbers on those bank statements, but I was harboring a hidden dangerous flaw in my philosophy. I had unconsciously attached my entire sense of self-worth, my daily mood, and my emotional stability to those fluctuating numbers. I felt invincible when the markets were up, and I felt a subtle, lingering anxiety on the days they were down. Then a severe financial storm hit. It was a sudden, violent shift in the marketplace, an unexpected economic downturn that sent ripples of absolute panic through everyone I knew. The newspapers were screaming about impending doom. People were talking about it in hushed, terrified voices at every corner. And despite all my hard work, I allowed that external chaos to become my internal reality. I can still vividly recall the physical sensation of that panic. I remember waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, my mind racing with catastrophic thoughts. I was watching the value of my hard-earned investments shrink day by day, hour by hour. Every morning I would look at the financial reports and feel a heavy, sickening knot in my stomach. I was entirely consumed by fear, and fear is a terrible advisor. Under the unbearable pressure of that anxiety, I convinced myself that I was being responsible by cutting my losses. I told myself I was being practical, that I was saving what little I had left. But the truth was, I wasn't being responsible at all. I was simply terrified. I was emotionally breaking under the weight of uncertainty. So, I liquidated almost everything. I sold out at the absolute lowest point of the market, locking in a devastating permanent loss purely because the emotional pain of holding on and riding out the storm was too much for me to bear. I traded away my future wealth for a temporary, fragile illusion of emotional relief. The immediate aftermath was quiet, but it was a devastating kind of quiet. Once the dust settled, the reality of what I had done washed over me. I felt physically sick. I had worked for years, sacrificing time and energy, only to let a few weeks of fear dismantle it all. The money was gone, but worse than that, my confidence was shattered. I felt profound, suffocating shame. I felt like an absolute failure. Seeking some form of comfort, I arranged to meet with my mentor, Mr. Earl Shoaff. I walked into his office that day with my head hung low. I was fully prepared to complain endlessly about the economy. I was ready to blame the market, the government, the unpredictable nature of the world. I sat down in his office and poured out my miserable story of financial woe. I expected him to lean across the desk, put a comforting hand on my shoulder, and offer me his deepest sympathy. I fully expected him to validate my victimhood and agree that the world had been terribly unfair to me. Mr. Shoaff just sat there looking at me with those calm, deeply perceptive eyes. He didn't interrupt. He let me exhaust myself, letting me finish my long, bitter tirade about how the financial world had ruined me. When I finally ran out of breath and sat there in silence waiting for his pity, he leaned forward. He did not offer me sympathy. He offered me surgery. He looked at me and said, "Jim, you seem to think that the marketplace took your money. You are operating under the delusion that the economy robbed you. The marketplace didn't take a single dime from you. You gave it away willingly because you could not control your own mind." That statement hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was shocking in its directness. He continued, his voice perfectly steady. "The market went down, Jim, as it always does from time to time. That is simply the nature of the season. Winter arrived in the economy. But you didn't just experience the winter. You let the winter get inside of you. You let the frost into your soul. You panicked. And in the world of money, panic is the most expensive luxury you can never, ever afford to indulge." He explained to me that wealthy people, the true stoics of the financial world, do not have a magical shield against losing money. They simply have a shield against losing their minds. He made me see that my financial loss was actually a character loss. I lacked the stoic endurance to sit still in a storm. He told me that if I did not master my emotional reactions, it would not matter how much money I made in the spring and summer of my life, because I would inevitably give it all back in the winter out of sheer terror. That conversation changed the entire trajectory of my life and my philosophy. It was an incredibly bitter pill to swallow, realizing that my own lack of emotional discipline was the true thief of my prosperity. The crushing shame I felt shifted that day. I was no longer ashamed of being a victim of the economy. I was ashamed of being a victim of my own untrained, reactive mind. But from that very specific shame grew a fierce, unbreakable resolve. I decided on that day in Mr. Shoaff's office that I would never again allow the external fluctuations of the world to dictate my internal peace. I realized that true wealth is not the money itself. True wealth is the person you must become to attract it, keep it, and multiply it. A person of deep substance, a person of profound calm, a person who can look at a financial chart heading downwards and not see a personal tragedy, but see an opportunity or simply a test of their own character. This is a heavy realization to carry, and it requires profound, undisturbed self-reflection to truly absorb and apply to your own life. I'll leave a few moments of quiet at the end of our time today, specifically for this reason. You will need a space free from my voice and free from the constant noise of the world to look honestly at your own history with money and emotion. You need to examine the times you let fear take the wheel. I had to learn the hard way to detach my identity from the fluctuating numbers on a page. I had to learn that money is just a tool, and a tool is completely useless if the hands holding it are shaking uncontrollably with anxiety. Think about the thousands of people who sell their assets, their properties, their businesses at a fraction of their true value during a crisis. Mathematically, it makes no sense, but they do it because the emotional weight of holding on feels heavier than the financial loss of letting go. They pay a massive premium just to stop feeling afraid. The pain of my mistake with Mr. Shoaff was agonizing, but the tuition I paid for that lesson was worth every single penny. It bought me a stoic philosophy that has sustained me through every economic winter that followed. The question you must face right now is about your own history. Have you ever let the terrified noise of the crowd force you into a decision that cost you your future? And if so, are you finally ready to stop blaming the weather and start taking responsibility for your own mind? To understand why the wealthy never panic, we must look at the fundamental laws of nature. The universe does not operate on a system of fairness, it operates on a strict system of laws. And one of the most powerful laws you will ever encounter is the law of the seasons. In nature, winter always follows autumn. It has been this way for thousands of years, and it will be this way long after we are gone. Winter is a time of cold, of hardship, of barren trees and frozen ground. The animals know winter is coming, so they prepare. They gather food, they build shelters, they adapt. Yet somehow when the economic winter arrives, when the markets freeze, when inflation bites and jobs become scarce, human beings act completely shocked. They act as if an unprecedented personal injustice has been done to them. They throw their hands up in despair and scream at the sky, demanding to know why it is snowing. But the Stoic, the true student of life and wealth, never acts surprised by the winter. They understand that economic winters are not punishments. They are simply part of the cycle. They are necessary periods of correction and cleansing. You cannot change the season. You cannot stand in your front yard and command the snow to stop falling. You cannot legislate a permanent economic summer. If you spend your energy complaining about the harshness of the winter, you will simply freeze to death while complaining. The only thing you can change is yourself. You can get stronger. You can get wiser. You can learn how to build a better fire. You can learn how to thrive in the cold while everyone else is huddled in fear. This is the essence of Stoicism applied to your finances. It is the profound realization that the external environment is entirely out of your control, but your internal environment is exclusively yours to govern. Let us talk about the wind. The same wind blows on us all. The wind of economic disaster, the wind of opportunity, the wind of inflation, the wind of recession. It is the exact same wind blowing across the entire globe. But if we are all sailing on the same ocean, under the same sky, with the same wind blowing, how is it that some people arrive at a destination of immense wealth and freedom, while others crash onto the rocks of bankruptcy and despair? The difference is not the blowing of the wind. The difference is the set of the sail. It is how you choose to respond to the circumstances that dictates your ultimate destination. The masses let the wind of a financial crisis blow them wherever it wants. They drop their sails, surrender the wheel, and let panic steer the ship. But the architect of wealth, the Stoic investor, responds differently. When the gale force winds of an economic crash begin to howl, they do not abandon ship. They do not close their eyes and hope for the best. They step up to the helm. They adjust their sails. They use the raw, terrifying power of that very same wind to propel themselves forward. They understand that every crisis carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. While the amateur is paralyzed by the fear of losing what they have, the master is calmly scanning the horizon, looking for the opportunities that are always revealed when the tide goes out. This requires an extraordinary level of emotional discipline. You see, your brain is biologically wired for survival. When you see your portfolio drop, when you see the cost of living rise, your primitive brain interprets that as a literal threat to your life. It triggers a physical fight or flight response. Adrenaline floods your system, logic shuts down, and pure emotion takes over. The instinct is to run, to sell, to hide. The wealthy have trained themselves to override this biological panic button. They have developed a gap between the stimulus and their response. In that silent gap lies their entire financial freedom. They feel the exact same fear as everyone else, but they refuse to let that fear make their financial decisions. They force logic back into the driver's seat. We must also consider the law of sowing and reaping. This is an absolute, unforgiving law of the universe. Whatever you sow, you will eventually reap. If you plant tomato seeds, you will get tomatoes. You cannot plant weeds and expect a harvest of beautiful flowers. In the world of money, your thoughts and your emotional reactions are the seeds you are planting every single day. If you sow seeds of panic, desperation, and short-term thinking during an economic crisis, what kind of financial harvest do you think you will reap? You will reap poverty. You will reap regret. You will reap a future built on a crumbling foundation of fear. You cannot build a fortress of wealth using the fragile bricks of anxiety. The people who build lasting multi-generational wealth are sowing entirely different seeds during times of chaos. They are sowing seeds of patience. They are sowing seeds of strategic acquisition. They are sowing seeds of intense self-improvement. They know that the winter is the absolute best time to study, to read, to sharpen their skills, and to prepare for the spring. Because the spring always follows the winter, it never fails. The opportunity will return, and when it does, it will shower its massive rewards on those who use the winter to get better, not on those who use the winter to complain. Consider the concept of inflation, a word that strikes terror into the hearts of the middle class. People spend hours agonizing over the rising cost of bread, the rising cost of fuel, the shrinking power of their paycheck. They petition the government to fix the prices. They wish the economy was easier. But remember our foundational philosophy. Do not wish it was easier, wish you were better. Inflation is essentially a harsh, silent tax on those who refuse to increase their own value. If the cost of living goes up by 10%, the Stoic does not waste time crying about the injustice of it all. The Stoic simply decides to become 20% more valuable to the marketplace. They upgrade their skills, they solve bigger problems, they become indispensable. Money is just a shadow of value. If you increase your value, the money will naturally follow, regardless of what the inflation rate is doing. You must stop focusing on the shrinking value of the dollar and start focusing intensely on the expanding value of your own mind. The marketplace will always compensate you for the value you deliver, not for the time you spend worrying. Worry is a completely bankrupt emotional investment. It pays zero dividends. It only consumes your most precious resources, your energy and your focus. Money loves quiet. It is a very timid creature. It runs away from loud, chaotic, desperate environments. If your mind is a chaotic mess of anxiety and fear, money will not want to stay with you. It will find a way to slip through your fingers and travel to a mind that is calm, ordered, and disciplined. Have you ever noticed how the most successful people in any room are usually the quietest? They are not shouting about their successes, and they are certainly not screaming about their losses. They are observing, they are calculating, they are maintaining their internal equilibrium. When a market crashes, wealth is not actually destroyed. The buildings are still there, the companies are still there, the resources are still there. The wealth simply transfers. It transfers from the impatient to the patient. It transfers from the fearful to the courageous. It transfers from those who let their emotions rule them to those who rule their emotions. It is a massive, silent shift of power and resources, and it happens every single time the economy experiences a winter. The Stoic understands this mechanism perfectly. They position themselves not as victims of the transfer, but as the quiet recipients of it. They do not wish for the crash, but they are absolutely prepared to capitalize on it when it happens. They have the cash reserves ready. They have the emotional fortitude ready. They have the clarity of mind to buy when there is blood in the streets. This level of mastery is not reserved for a special elite. It is available to anyone willing to do the hard, unglamorous work of mastering their own psychology. It begins with a single, uncompromising decision to stop outsourcing your emotional stability to the stock market, the government, or the evening news. You must become the undisputed master of your internal domain. If you continue to let the external world tell you how to feel about your internal worth and your financial future, you will forever be a leaf blown about by the wind. So as you look at the current state of the world, with all its volatility and uncertainty, I have to ask you a question that demands total honesty. Are you using this economic winter to sharpen your skills and build your character? Or are you just huddled in the corner, hoping the cold will magically disappear? We have spent our time so far discussing the grand philosophies of wealth and the undeniable laws of the economic seasons. We have talked about the wind and the sails, the architect and the foundation. But philosophy is completely useless if it remains trapped in the realm of theory. Now it is time to turn the spotlight away from the external world and point it directly and uncomfortably at you. This is the hardest part of the process of personal development. It is the mental audit. Most people will willingly spend hours auditing their businesses, balancing their checkbooks, and scrutinizing their grocery receipts to save a few pennies. But they will absolutely refuse to spend 5 minutes auditing their own emotional reactions. They will track every single dollar they spend, but they will not track the devastating, lifelong cost of their own panic. I want you to take a hard look in the mirror right now, not at your physical reflection, but at your financial character. What is your absolute default setting when the news turns bad and the charts turn red? When a crisis hits, do you immediately look for someone to blame, or do you look for a mirror to see how you need to change? I hear the exact same excuses today that I heard 40 years ago. The names of the politicians change, the specific details of the global crisis change, but the script of the amateur remains exactly the same. They come to me and they say, "But Jim, you do not understand, the inflation rate is unprecedented right now. The market manipulation is incredibly unfair. The whole system is completely rigged against the average person." And to all of those complaints I say, perhaps you are completely right. Perhaps the wind of economic hardship is blowing harder right now than it has in a generation. But let me ask you a very sobering question. What does complaining about the wind do for the set of your sail? It does absolutely nothing. It is a completely bankrupt use of your human energy. Complaining only guarantees that your ship will be violently smashed against the rocks while you are too busy standing on the deck, shaking your fist at the sky. You have to take full, radical, uncompromising responsibility for your financial reality. As long as you are pointing your finger at the government or the central banks or your employer, you are surrendering all of your personal power. You are literally handing over the keys to your financial future to the very entities you claim are destroying it. Let us do a real, honest audit of your emotional spending over the last few years. How much of your precious energy are you wasting on anxiety? How many hours of sleep have you lost staring at a dark ceiling, vividly calculating scenarios of absolute financial ruin that have not even happened yet? That anxiety is a massive, unrecoverable withdrawal from your account of human potential. You are paying a heavy emotional tax that no government ever levied on you. You levied it on yourself through a lack of mental discipline. You are allowing the terrified noise of the world to bankrupt your spirit long before it ever has a chance to touch your bank account. And the ultimate tragedy is that this state of panic makes you financially clumsy. It makes you blind. When your mind is clouded with the fog of fear, you cannot see the chessboard of the marketplace. You cannot recognize the incredible, once-in-a-lifetime bargains that a winter market always provides to those who are prepared. Instead, you sell your assets, your investments, and your future for pennies on the dollar. You sell them in a state of terror to the very people who have learned to control their emotions, and then, a few years later, you have the nerve to call those people lucky. It is never luck. It is simply emotional discipline capitalizing on the predictable emotional chaos of the masses. We are approaching the end of our time together today, and I need you to prepare your mind for what is coming. Don't rush to the next video when I'm finished speaking. Do not let the algorithm pull you immediately back into the endless, shallow stream of internet entertainment and mindless distraction. I'm going to ask you to do something incredibly difficult for the modern, overstimulated mind. I'm going to ask you to sit in absolute silence. I will leave that quiet space for you intentionally at the end, because the hard, sharp truths we are discussing right now cannot be digested while you are distracted. They require the quiet, uncomfortable crucible of your own conscience. You need that silence to finally hear the answers that your ego has been desperately shouting over for years. When you enter that silence, I want you to confront the questions that most people run from their entire lives. When the last major financial storm hit your household, did you stand tall like an oak tree with deep roots? Or did you bend and snap like a dry twig? Did you lead your family with a sense of calm, stoic assurance? Or did you infect your entire household with your own desperate panic? Did you use the downturn to double down on your personal development, reading more books, attending more classes, and sharpening your skills? Or did you freeze like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming recession? These are not questions designed to make you feel worthless. They are questions designed to wake you up from your slumber. Shame is a completely useless emotion if it does not immediately lead to a permanent change in your behavior. I want you to feel the heavy weight of your past emotional mistakes only long enough to swear an oath to yourself that you will never ever repeat them. Look closely at the people you admire, the individuals who have built lasting, unshakable wealth. Do you honestly think they possess a secret mathematical formula that was kept hidden from you? Do you think they have a special magical hotline to the universe that warns them before the market drops? No. They simply have a radically different set of mental habits. They have rigorously trained themselves to view every economic crisis as an exam. Every time the economy falters, life is handing you a pop quiz on your personal philosophy. The amateur completely fails the quiz because they did not study during the summer. They were too busy enjoying the easy money, lazily mistaking the rising tide for their own brilliance. But the master passes the exam with flying colors because they spent the entire summer preparing for the winter. They built their character when it was easy, so their character would support them when it was brutally hard. You have to draw a permanent line in the sand today. You cannot afford to live the rest of your life as an emotional reactionary, swinging from hope to despair with every breaking news alert. The stakes are simply too high. Your future freedom, your family's ultimate security, and the legacy you will leave behind all depend on your ability to master this one crucial psychological skill. You must construct an internal, stoic fortress that is completely impervious to the chaotic headlines of the daily news. You must become a person who can hold their nerve when absolutely everyone else in the room is losing theirs. This is the ultimate defining test of your personal development journey. It is easy to be positive, to be generous, and to have a great philosophy when the checks are rolling in and the sun is shining brightly. But your true character, your actual functional financial philosophy, is completely revealed by how you act when the money stops flowing, the sky turns black, and the storm begins to rage. So, as you prepare to audit your own soul in the quiet moments ahead, I leave you with this crucial thought to confront. If a massive economic crash happened tomorrow and you lost half of your net worth overnight, would your character crumble along with your portfolio? Or would you have the profound emotional fortitude to smile, adjust your sails, and quietly begin to rebuild? The time for making excuses has officially come to an end. We have reached the point in our conversation, and perhaps the profound turning point in your own life, where the rubber must finally meet the road. You can listen to hours of philosophy, you can read hundreds of books on Stoic wisdom, and you can nod your head in agreement at every single word I have shared with you today. But if you do not step out of this room and fundamentally change your physical and mental posture toward financial adversity, this has all been a magnificent, tragic waste of your precious time. The transformation we are talking about does not happen by accident, it does not happen by hoping, and it certainly does not happen by wishing the economy would magically fix itself. It happens in a single defining moment of absolute resolve. It happens on the exact day you become thoroughly and completely disgusted with your own fear. Disgust is a remarkably powerful, life-changing emotion. When you finally look at your own anxiety, your own exhausting habit of panicking over the economy, and you say to yourself, I have had it. I will no longer live as a trembling victim of the evening news. I will no longer allow the chaotic, unpredictable fluctuations of the stock market to dictate the peace inside my own home. That is the day your financial life actually begins. Until that day, you are just playing a terrifying game of chance, blindly hoping the weather stays nice. We live in a modern world that is desperately trying to sell you the illusion of a quick fix. People want the secret formula, the hidden stock tip, the magic button that will solve all their financial problems without requiring them to change who they are. But the universe does not work that way. If someone hands you $1 million out of pure luck, you had better hurry up and become a millionaire on the inside, or the universe will inevitably find a way to take that money back. Wealth without character is a tragedy waiting to happen. If you have not built the emotional capacity, the stoic endurance to hold on to wealth during a crisis, the market will violently strip it away from you, not out of malice, but out of the natural, unforgiving laws of the financial seasons. The money will simply flow back into the hands of those who have disciplined their minds. You have to stop chasing the external reward and start fiercely building the internal foundation. You must construct an internal fortress so deep, so reinforced with discipline and emotional control that no economic winner can ever penetrate its walls. Think very carefully about the people who are watching you right now. Think about your family, your children, your friends, and your peers. What exact financial philosophy are you currently demonstrating for them on a daily basis? When the prices go up at the grocery store, when the headlines scream about inflation and impending economic doom, do they see a leader who stands tall, adjusts the sails, and calmly looks for opportunity? Or do they see a terrified amateur who complains, shrinks, and projects a suffocating anxiety into the entire household? You must understand that you are not just managing your own bank account. You are actively writing the behavioral blueprint for the next generation. If you teach them to panic by your own frantic example, you are passing down a devastating legacy of poverty, regardless of how much money you might eventually leave them in a trust fund. You must become the solid rock for your family. You must become the individual who, when the financial hurricane makes landfall, can look at the people you love and say with absolute, unshakable conviction, "Do not worry, we are entirely prepared for this, and we will be stronger on the other side." So what is the immediate, non-negotiable call to action? How do you actually step into this stoic mastery of wealth starting today? You must drastically and ruthlessly change your daily mental diet. You have to stop consuming the toxic, fear-mongering garbage that the world is desperately trying to feed you. Turn off the endless streams of panic. Stop checking your portfolio every 10 minutes, as if your frantic, fearful staring will somehow positively change the numbers on the screen. It is a complete drain on your vitality. Take that exact same energy, that exact same intense focus, and redirect it entirely into your own personal development. The global marketplace is constantly begging for people of high value, high skill, and high emotional intelligence. While everyone else is paralyzed by the terrifying illusion that the sky is falling, you must be in the corner quietly, diligently sharpening your axe. Read the books you have been putting off for years. Take the challenging courses that will double or triple your value to your employer or your clients. Become so incredibly competent and so remarkably disciplined that the economy has absolutely no choice but to richly reward you regardless of the season. Understand this profound and liberating truth. True wealth is the complete and total absence of financial anxiety. True wealth is the deep, cellular knowing that you have the internal skills, the relentless mindset, and the emotional sovereignty to generate immense value in any economy, under any government administration, and in any season of life. If all the systems failed tomorrow, and they took everything away from you, your bank accounts, your real estate, your hard-earned investments, a true stoic would simply brush off the dust, look at the completely blank canvas, and get back to work with a quiet, knowing smile, because they know, without a shadow of a doubt, that the real asset was never the physical money. The real asset is, and always will be, the extraordinary mind that created the money in the first place. When you possess that supreme level of internal security, the entire world changes its shape. You stop seeing a landscape of terrifying threats, and you start seeing endless, magnificent horizons of opportunity. You stop operating from a cramped place of desperate survival, and you begin to operate from a vast place of limitless abundance. This is the mountaintop. This is the ultimate destination we are striving for. But to reach that peak, you must boldly climb through the jagged, uncomfortable rocks of your own ego and your own deeply ingrained fears. We have covered a tremendous amount of philosophical ground today. We have confronted the painful, uncomfortable truths about panic, the absolute necessity of taking radical personal responsibility, and the unforgiving, beautiful laws of the natural seasons. Now my voice must fade away, and your real, deeply personal work must begin. In just a few moments, the screen will hold perfectly still, the music will soften to a whisper, and you will be left with the most powerful and often the most intimidating sound in the entire world: absolute silence. I urge you with everything I have, do not skip this. Do not immediately reach for your phone to find the next cheap distraction. Do not let the algorithm pull you back into the shallow stream of noise. This silence is not just a pause in the video, it is the most critical, transformative part of this entire experience. It is the quiet crucible where mere information finally turns into life-altering wisdom. I want you to sit completely still in this quiet space and let everything we have discussed wash over you. Take a deep, slow, deliberate breath. Feel the absolute, undisturbed stillness of the present moment. In this profound silence, the economy does not exist. The frantic stock market does not exist. The loud opinions of other people do not exist. There is only you, your honest conscience, and the weight of the choices you are about to make. Use these silent moments to completely forgive yourself for every single financial mistake you have ever made out of fear in the past. Let the shame and the regret dissolve entirely into the quiet. And then, from that beautifully clean slate, make the ultimate, uncompromising decision about who you will become. As you enter this sacred space of quiet reflection, I want you to strip away all the tired excuses, all the convenient blame, and all the terrifying noise of the outside world. I leave you with this one final question to echo in the absolute stillness of your own mind. When the next inevitable winter arrives and the rest of the world descends into absolute panic, will you be a fragile victim of the storm, or will you be the unshakable master of your own soul?